Well, hello there, John Meyer here. I've released a video every Friday since April 3rd, which has been a big accomplishment, but the thing that I'm most proud of is that I've done it all while cutting my own hair. So today I want to ask the question, as a producer, engineer, composer in 2020, is DIY worth it? Now obviously in our current predicament, cutting my own hair is probably worth it. So we all know that the way us music makers make money these days has completely shifted over the past 20 years. The days of specializing for the most part are gone. And if you're like me, you're trying to do a little bit of everything. I love trying to do all the stuff, but computers, software, guitars, microphones, preamps, that all gets very expensive. When I started my career back in the early 2000s, I had $0. I was an intern at a studio where I drove 45 minutes to get to and spent $20 a day at lunch because they like to eat well. One day a drummer showed up, and when he wasn't playing, he was sitting in the control room with a soldering iron and a circuit board, and he was building a preamp. And so as someone who was new to this and very broke and very interested, I asked him 1,000 questions. I made a few preamps along the way, microphones, I built my desk that I sit at. So I have some experience with doing things myself, and today I'm going to try to build a DIY recording equipment reamp kit for my patch bay. If you missed that video, you can go back a few weeks and see it. But before I do that, I think I'll share a few pros and cons of going the DIY route. No idea what the back looks like, but the front looks okay. This is not going to be a detailed tutorial video, instructional video on how to make this particular piece of gear. But what I wanted to do is build it while I discuss with you my experiences as to what the pros and cons are of the DIY mindset. The number one pro is obvious. You can save money doing things yourself. Now with this kit, I could buy it ready-made. I think it's sold out on the website currently, but it would be a few more dollars to buy it ready-made, and it would probably be worth it, but that wouldn't make for a very good video. Now on the flip side of that, when we moved into our house a couple years ago, I wanted to build a desk in my studio. And I wanted one of those nice desks that has a keyboard built into it. So I did some research and found out that they are ridiculously expensive. Back when I bought my first house, I had $0. And it was a time where you could basically tell the bank how much money you made and they would give you a house. It was really crazy before the crash of 2007 or whatever it was. And I had no experience with carpentry, but YouTube was new and I watched some videos and learned how to make straight cuts and put up sheetrock and cut 2x4s and make walls. And so I have some basic skills. I realized I could go to Home Depot and buy all the parts that I needed to make the desk, and it would probably cost me less than it would to ship a real desk to my house. Feel like maybe there's some ground beef in here, we'll see. That leads me to my second point, customization. My room is only 9 feet wide, 20 feet deep. I needed to get around to the back of the desk, and so I wanted to build something that fit perfectly. I'm also not a very big person, and you may not know that from watching my videos because I'm taller than my 10-year-old and my 5-year-old, at least for now. And so I wanted a desk that fit me ergonomically, so I built it to where my hands rested exactly where I wanted them to, and it works for me, and I wasn't gonna get that by buying something that was already made. When you build your own gear, you can make the choice of capsules for your microphones, transformers for your preamp, speakers for your guitar cabinets. You can wire your pedals any way you want. There's a lot of opportunity to customize things exactly the way you want them to work and sound. And that leads me to the first con, which is that it's difficult. These are skills that people have spent their entire life mastering. Now, some of these things like soldering are fairly basic and they're skills that we need. So that's not a waste of time, but to think that we can figure these things out, or to think that I can figure these things out by watching a few YouTube videos, is quite silly. Now, I think there have been times where my attitude of thinking I could do anything that I want with YouTube video has been good for me, but sometimes it's led me down paths I wish I never would have gone down. L2A. Bag number 2. Number 3. The circuit board. This looks doable. The second con is similar to the first in that the projects never quite turn out right. Now, with my desk, it looks good on the outside, but the day that I have to move it, I'm scared to death that it's gonna fall apart because I put the cosmetic touches on the top, but it's not made very well. I have pieces of gear that are falling apart that I never was good at making things look good and look nice. And if something goes wrong, I knew enough to build it, but I don't really know enough to troubleshoot it. And it's not really in a position where I could give it to someone else to troubleshoot because they don't know what I did. And I found that I would often cut corners on things that at the time didn't seem very important. But as time passed on, I would realize those things were very important. The third con is that it's incredibly time consuming. Now there are some skills, like I mentioned earlier, like soldering, that you're gonna need, and you need to take the time and effort and watch the videos on YouTube to learn how to do those things. But make sure that if you're getting into something that's kind of niche but requires a lot of information, that you're gonna be doing more of that in the future. Otherwise, you're spending a whole lot of your precious time learning how to do something that you only use once. Fourth con, and perhaps the most important, is that it could kill you. This is electricity. When I'm working on my desk outside, I'm using saws. I'm lucky that I have not cut off a finger or electrocuted myself. I do know what 110 volts feels like, and I don't want to feel that again. And I have seen fireballs shoot off my desk and to the ceiling. So know that when you're messing with this stuff and you're building things, you could hurt yourself and hurt your livelihood. The fifth con is that it can be very expensive. Now I know that goes against my first pro, is that it can help you save money. I have a garage full of capacitors and tools that I never used and parts for kits that I never built that I wanted to build. And I bought a lot of equipment that I never used. I ended up giving it to a friend of mine because he could put them to more use. So I imagine I spent a lot extra. We also need to keep in mind that there's so much competition with gear now and margins are so low. And so the price that companies are marking up from the actual component costs are not very high. So what we may have saved 10, 15, 20 years ago, we might not be saving now. Is DIY a waste of time? That's just too complicated to answer. There are so many variables. I'm very happy that I have the skills that I had to do some of these basic tasks, but now I'm to the point where the savings need to be obvious to me for me to take time away from the things like writing music or making YouTube videos. This may or may not have been helpful to you, but I'm learning through making these videos that there are many of you out there who are like me. You have the same interests, you have the same struggles. And so this video hopefully can kind of at least let you know that I'm dealing with some of the same stuff. If you're interested in this, if you're interested in building furniture or equipment like this, I suggest go for it. The resources available now online are so much better than they were 20 years ago when I got started doing this. These kits didn't exist 15, 20 years ago, and now they're very affordable and you can learn your way around without a huge investment. And you may find that you love this. You know, my friend Joel, he's an amazing drummer and he got into this and now he has this company building gear. I don't think that was his goal from the beginning. And how I am with sampling and making sounds, I never imagined that would be something that I would be so interested in doing until I actually started making the sounds. And now who knows where that's gonna go. I really enjoy the fact that I get to make these sounds and use them in my songs, and I get to hear the sounds that you all have made using my samples to create beautiful music. And that's amazing, and I'm glad I started down that path. I do thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful. I try to make videos every week about music-related matters like this, so if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you next week. Box within some paper within a box. Quite nice. This is my first unboxing.